Reid Hoffman gave a very interesting speech recently at SWSX in which he talked about the evolution of the web. Web 1.0 basically was all about go search, get data, and some limited interactivity. And then we moved to Web 2.0, real identities and real relationships. And now everyone is talking about Web 3.0 with real identities generating massive amounts of data. This is the vision that Reid has. This is a vision that Silicon Valley has for data. I'm going to show you my own vision, which I always criticize Silicon Valley for being too focused on what Silicon Valley says. Silicon Valley sees social media as the next big thing. They're right about it. But I also want to take you outside the country and show you what's happening in India, for example, for one project, to show you how dramatically things are changing, to show you what's happening with this new world of data, and then I'm going to discuss how it might impact you. So I'm going to take you on my vision. This is the Vivek Wadhwa vision of where the web is, where it's headed abroad. And then I'm going to tell you what the opportunities are for entrepreneurs and for others to change the world. First of all, what data did we have before the web and in Web 1.0? We had data on climate. We had data on pollution and health, land records. Go back to the 1800s, 1900s. We were gathering information about season changes, about temperature, and so on and so on. We had data on employments, and then we had the yellow pages, we had the white pages, we had phone books, which gathered extensive amounts of data about people, driver's licenses, and then you had civil judgments, liens, bankruptcies, credit cards, credit reports, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is the world as it existed only 10 or 20 years ago. Right? This is the information we had. This is what we built our computer systems to run. This is what businesses worked on. And this was where things stood for the longest time. And then Web 2.0 came along. This happened over the last 15 years or so. I'll bet you that most of you 15 years ago didn't use email, that you didn't surf the web. You didn't go to the internet to get all of your news. I personally have stopped watching TV. I can't tell you the last TV show I watched because I don't get my information from TV anymore. I don't get my entertainment from TV anymore. Everything is on the web. Even when I want to watch a movie, I go online and watch a movie now. So the entire world has changed. This is the Web 2.0 world. And guess what? The web, Google, the diabolical forces out there know what news we read. They know where we shop. They know what sites we surf for leisure. They know what sites we surf for business. They know what music we listen to, what movies we watch, where we travel, our health, education, socioeconomic status, etc. Google, in particular, also knows what emails we write. It knows who we talk to, what we say. It knows what we have in our attachments. It knows when we go and surf porn sites. It knows when we go and read information about technology. It knows about what our children are doing. In fact, there are a lot of privacy implications to where we are today. Google has so much information right now that Big Brother would be envious. Big Brother couldn't have dreamed about getting all the data that Google has, of knowing where you are, what you're thinking, what you're doing, what time you wake up, what time you sleep, and knowing everything which anyone says to you. Because the vast majority of information we get today is by email. I'm addicted to it. I mean, I check it at least 1,000 times a day. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but the fact is that I'm connected to email right now. Well, guess what? My email comes through Google. Google knows what I've received before I do. Right? So there are a lot of privacy implications for this. And you can look at all the negatives and all the data that the governments are gathering, Google is gathering, and so on and so on. I'm not going to talk about that here. I'm going to look at the positive side. Because we don't, all of you are, most of you in the room are entrepreneurs. You're looking at what you can do with this data, where you can take it. So I'm going to focus on the positives over here. But be aware that there are a lot of negatives with everything which I'm talking about. All right, so what's next? Now we're talking about social. This is what Reid talked about, which I totally agreed with. That now we go to LinkedIn and we enter our complete work history. Before, you had your resume, which was between you and your potential employer or your employer. Okay. The world didn't get to see a resume. It was a private document. Guess what? Everyone right now goes and posts a resume on LinkedIn. everyone in the tech industry at least, and everyone in many, many other industries. I would be surprised if there was one person in this room who didn't have their resume on LinkedIn. You also have your references on LinkedIn. In the past, references were between you and your employer when you were interviewing for a job. Okay? Now, guess what? You have your recommendations online. You have your colleagues online. If a recruiter wants to check up on you, they know everyone you know. They know everyone you know professionally. They know what their backgrounds are. All they have to do is send them an email, and they can check up on you. They know who you don't know. The fact that you may have worked at a company before and are not connected to your boss anymore is a red flag. Right? This is data that's out there, which we take for granted. We're not even afraid of it. But this is all new. And then we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook. We're talking about our likes, we're talking about our dislikes. We're talking about our children. We're talking about our sex life. We're talking about everything under the sun. Guess what? It's all being recorded. When we travel, we go to Kayak or Orbitz or one of the travel sites, and we make reservations. Then we go to another site and make a hotel reservation. Your wife may not know where you're staying, but Google does. Or your internet service provider does. Or the government that's watching you does. Or the person who's hacking into your computer does. Or the Chinese government does. Right? But that's the state of data today. That almost everything about us, our friends, our likes, our dislikes, is now available on the web. Now, this is what Web 3.0 was going to read. What I'm going to show you now is that there's a lot more happening than meets the eye over here. Now, what about medical records? The Obama administration has made it a goal to have medical records digitized and available. There are hundreds, maybe thousands of startups right now who are addressing the medical records problem. When I say problem, I mean taking all the data that exists with your physicians, with the hospitals, and now making it online. So everything about you, every time you had a cold and got a fever and had to go to the doctor, every time you had a root canal, every procedure that you have ever done, every medicine you took, every time you went to the pharmacist and got a pain reliever, you took a sedative, all of these data are now being cataloged online. Okay. So personal videos, there are millions of hours of YouTube videos being uploaded every day, every week, every month, right? We don't even think about what we have in those videos. You take a video of your house, and now suddenly you have a catalog of all the material possessions you have. You have photographs in your video. Again, we don't think about the fact we've gathered all these data. Surveillance videos. I don't know if there are any surveillance videos here or not, but I would be surprised if there weren't. This is a public university. They have security videos. All of that is being cataloged away somewhere. Genome data. Right now, the cheapest DNA sequencing you can get is about $10,000. This is if you're sick, and there are companies that will offer it to you for a discounted rate. Typically, it'll cost between $10,000 and $50,000. Moving forward 2 or 3 years, a lot of the key players are saying it'll be down to $1,000. Move forward another 2 or 3 years beyond that, you're talking about a few $100s to get your entire genome sequenced. So forget about Twitter, forget about Facebook, forget about LinkedIn. Imagine when your entire genome is now available. You can match up your genome to your friends, to your likes, to your food likes and dislikes. You can have people analyzing everything about you. If you have a particular sequence in your genes, you're more likely to have this kind of behavior. If you have this gene, you might be a psychopath. God knows what type of data we're going to start uncovering. But this is all going to be publicly available. Another thing people don't realize, your iPhone. It knows where you are. It knows who you talk to. It knows what you do. It knows when you wake. It knows your entire life. Now, I don't know what Steve Jobs is recording. I know that when I connect to iTunes, he uploads a lot of information about me. And he knows every app that I download. Right? But the question is, does my camera turn on when I don't expect it to turn on? Is the voice recorder on when I'm not aware of it? And when I'm sitting at home and arguing with my wife about something, is someone able to turn this on and keep track of that? There's a startup called Colors, which has gotten a lot of press in Silicon Valley, which when you take photographs, keeps track of who else you have in the room. It keeps track of how you held your camera, how fast you moved it, and so on. Well, that data is available to any stupid application that comes along. But imagine what can be done with all this information, so that everywhere I go, everything I do, I'm tagged. Forget about these devices that the government tags you with. I take this with me everywhere voluntarily. I wake up, it's next to my bed. I go to the bathroom, I take it with me sometimes. Everything is being recorded. So the amount of data that's being gathered is absolutely phenomenal. Imagine what can be done with this. I'm not talking about 5 years from now. This is today's data. We haven't even figured out how to harness this data. This is an explosion of data like you've never, ever seen before. And now let me take you to India. The biggest IT project in history. India has a population of 1.2 billion people. Over the next 2 or 3 or 4 years, every single man, woman, and child in India will have their fingerprints scanned. They're going to have their retina scanned. They're going to have their demographic information all held in one massive, giant database.